All right, we're catching the end of the Celdur versus Addy match. Celdur won game one in the open. Addy won game two in the closed. They moved to game three, where in a position where I was skimming and I thought it looked like a lot of tie options. Addy timed out, and they agreed it would have been a tie and agreed to continue playing rather than Celdur claiming the win there. So we move on to the second game on set three, and it's come up closed, and Addy has first turn. Now, I do not remember the exact cards they used the prior game, but the 6654 was definitely used. I only saw it at the end, I had it in the background. I'm going to assume Celdur also played it in that game. Now, we should know the stips are 5 through 9, must use one of each level. There might be more specificity to it, but I think that's basically it. Which tells us that Celdur has used his level 5 and 6 to start, while Addy began with his 8637's level 7. So Celdur putting more effort into using his lower level cards first, while Addy is playing something that creates a more immediate challenge. And this makes some sense as first for second turn, right? In general, first wants stuff to be easy to take so that their last turn can sweep the board more easily, while second turn wants stuff to be harder to take because they don't want first to sweep the game last turn. One thing to note, I talked about this a little with the Delhi match, is what we're calling the Akiyama principle of attack what they just played. Or and by attack what they just played, it doesn't mean like take the card they just played. It means assume that whatever they used is now where they are most missing strength. And I think there are two ways to think about this here. One way is to say, okay, Celdur has just played 3-2-8-8. Presuming his hand is something like a balanced hand, and especially on a set where you're going 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, he's probably not doubling up on the corner for 3. So his weakest directions, or at least the least consistent directions he'll have, are going to be down left. He's going to have no card good in both of those directions, or he's unlikely to. Level 9s might be able to cover for other stuff. So one thing you could do would be to say, okay, they don't have that. But another thing you could say is they already showed one card that could take that 8 from 4. There's probably not too many cards that can do so. Even landing on the -1, taking an 8 is fairly difficult, right? We saw a 2599 last game. That can take the 8 in two directions. Most high level cards will be able to, have a 50% chance to take that 8. And so, of the remaining two cards, especially because 6654, one card that could do so, already came out of the hand, there's a decent chance only one or two can do that. And so, by forcing them to have that recapture, you can play against what they're doing. And I think this has the benefit as well of going in two is a very soft square. Most of Celdur's cards are likely to be able to play well in two. So my instinct here would be to play two. And in fact, this is what we see. Oh, wait, this is not what we see. Celdur goes in 6 with the same. I missed a move, but it must have been this sequence, because if Celdur had gone in 2 and Addy had replied in 6, sorry, if Addy had played in 2 and Celdur had replied in 6, that would have, we wouldn't see the cards these colors, right? So Addy went 6 with the same and saying, I have high numbers facing out, and Celdur quick played 2. All right. In general, it's very hard to have 5 here, right? It's very hard to have 5. Now, Celdur has successfully used his levels 5, 6, 7, so he has his levels 8 and 9 remaining. And 9187 is. I always forget the orientation of WeGraph and Elena. WeGraph is 9781 or is it 9187? I think it's 9781. Pretty sure it's 9781. So like no level 8 is going to hit this plus, and it's or same. And no level 8 is going to hit either really. And I mean maybe you can find one, but none that people are going to run. And level 9 it's possible, but I think extremely unlikely. Therefore, Addy should assume Celdur doesn't have 5. And if you assume Celdur doesn't have 5 here, then you probably go 4 or 8. But of course, it is quite scary to play 4 or 8 when it might suddenly give up 5. And also, there's a good reason to go in 5, which is it takes 2. So maybe you do just go 5. I hate playing these setups. It's very much like, whatever you do, if they have the right combo, you just kind of lose. Like, you can't solidify it into a clean setup. And there's some players who will go, okay, everything walks into a combo, so I'm just going to go 7 and hand over the turn. But 7 is so unambitious that you usually end up in trouble anyway. Like, taking something or locking something in with 4, 5, or 8, I think is just much better practical chance. You kind of auto lose more often, but you also win more often, and I don't know if you fully lose less. I mean, more. It just, the losses feel really bad because you just like gave them a combo and you just couldn't combo back. But I think 4 and 5 are probably the squares that should be being looked at. Now, Addy has used his cards for 3 and 9, his big corners for 3 and 9, so he probably has ones for 1 and 7. And the one for 7 means he very likely has a capture on the 3, 2, 8, 8. Now, Addy tends to go a little less cornery with hands, I think, than many people do. So there's not necessarily a strong indication he has that corner. You can see with Celdur's hand, right? And maybe we should be thinking about Celdur's hand. Like, he very clearly went, here's my corner for 1, here's my corner for 7. Or, sorry, 3 and 7. He has corners for 1 and 9 remaining. I would guess he has a 9-9 corner and an A9 corner for those two squares. Given that's the case, those don't have a ton of combo potential against 5 here. Those kinds of cards. Alright, he goes 4. And you can see he does play his corner for 7. I think we can assume Addy has a corner for 1 and a kind of flux card in his low level. This is pretty unlikely to give a plus in 5, right? The kind of cards Celdur is using, it's just... I mean, I just can't imagine like a corner card that picks this off. And it really looks like Celdur's 2 remaining cards are corner cards. So I actually like this play quite a lot, given that I don't think Celdur can have 5. Can Addy have 5? Also tough, right? But if Celdur goes in 7, then Addy's last corner is for 1. He plays it in 5. He's up 6-4 with 2 high numbers facing out. If you get comboed, you lose, but you're going to have to suffer some of those losses. I think Celdur should go 7. And Addy has a flux card left, right? They're both kind of clearly going 4 corners and a kind of balanced-ish card that might have plus wall potential. Celdur went the 6-6-5-4. Addy's balance card, I don't know what his preferences are. It could be a side-to-side or an up-down. It could be a utility card like 6-6-5-4 that's kind of balanced in all directions. But I would expect he would have one of those rather than a big corner. And if he does have one of those, he easily could have 5. Alright, Celdur blocks 5. And this was a card that was played last game, which might mean we're seeing repetitions on last game, which, if so, should help with reads. That said, I think Celdur's last card is something for 1. And something for 1 is pretty decent finisher here, right? Because it never has to take something, it can surely take 9-9-2-3. So he's saying, I can capture that card, and I have a 9 or a 10 facing out towards 8. So what do you do if you're Addy? I think you probably block 8 and go up 7-3. Occasionally you get comboed to, the high heavens, but like... when you go in 7 here and you get comboed, it also feels terrible, and at least you have some winning chances going in 8 if you happen to have a high enough number they can't take. On the other hand, you cannot have a 10 facing out and a 9 facing out is very likely to be comboed, right? There's a very good chance Celdur has some kind of A9 corner or something like that. So maybe there's a case for 7. Always hard to guess here. I'm now kind of leaning towards 7, but I don't know. When you lose an 8, it feels bad, but when you lose in 7, it's like I didn't even give myself a chance to win. And if you go in 8, you're giving yourself some win equity here. But no, now I'm thinking the right pick is 7, but I don't know. I don't know the cards. But I would pick Seldur's last card as an A9 corner for 1, possibly an A8 corner, specifically with an 8 to the right. So there's some value of having a 9 facing out, but I think your likelihood of getting comboed is so high. All right. So Addy does block 7, and we did see an A9 corner for 1. We saw 9s are not safe. You'll notice if Addy had stuck the card in 8, he would have lost. Of course, it didn't flip 5, but even if it did flip 5, he would have been walked into a combo. So Addy makes, I think, a really good call going in 7, and Seldur's final card is a good sweeper. Nice hold for Addy on second turn here. I probably would have gone 2 instead of 6. And if we think about Seldur's hand there, maybe it plays kind of similarly, right? Celdur, but Seldur's, no, Celdur has decent directional power there. All right, tricky game. Now, I'm supposed to go do stuff, so I'm not going to be able to capture any more of this match. But it's fun to sometimes comment on closed games. Like, obviously, there's not a lot to say, but you can sort of guess at what cards they have and what hand constructions they're using, and think about what they should expect the other people to be able to do. For instance, I think given the cards Celdur had shown, given he showed a kind of utility card in 3, and then 2 opposite corners in the moves in 1 and 2, that he had shown here's 1 utility and here's 2 corners. His last 2 cards are just so likely to be corners. And this isn't like a mistake or anything. Like, I don't think like, oh, you're being predictable, this is terrible. But it means the other person should be playing with the understanding that your last 2 cards are for 1 and 9. And they were. 9-3-3-8 and 4-9-8-4 were the last 2 cards. But you'll notice they went for very different like cards for the corners, right? Celdur went for 2 8-8 corners, which is kind of the maximum power you can get on level 6 and 7. A 9-8 corner, not a 9-9, could have been a 9-9, and an A9 corner, which is the most powerful corner you could get at level 9. So very close to highest power corners, combined with a 6-6-5-4. The 6-6-5-4 does not give much information here, because the 6-6-5-4 does not line up to plus wall like any of those cards, so very much a utility against the opponent's hand. Addy, on the other hand, does have a 9-9 as his level 8, and did last game as well, but his level 9 is a slightly lower corner, potentially a little more dynamic, slightly lower power. Instead of 8-8, he has an 8-7 kind of semi-pair. You can see the backside of 8-6-3-7 can pick up the backside of 1-7-8-5 if need be. And we don't know what his low-level card it was, but a decent chance it'd play in 5. Very decent chance it'd play in 5. If I was Celdur, I might have played a 4-9-8-4 and 7 instead of going in 5. But if that does get comboed, you can get in trouble, and 1-7-8-5 did have that combo. So maybe there was some way to handle that there, but no, because you're giving up the capture on 9. Ignore me. Interesting game. I think reasonably played by both players. And obviously, when I think a move is bad, watching a closed game, like, that doesn't mean very much because I can't see the actual cards.